Hello, Notre Dame fans. Tim and I are ready to go. We were trying to figure out some buttons there just as we're going live. Notre Dame victorious over Georgia Tech today on Senior Day, 55 to nothing. It is Notre Dame's fifth straight season with 10 wins. That's the first time in program history. Tim, Mike Tirico said towards the end of the broadcast, statement Saturday across college football. How do you think Notre Dame made a statement today?
Well, when you win 55-0, it's a statement, and it was awesome. There was no senior day letdown today, that's for sure. They came out, they just came out and took care of business.
Mhm.
It was just boom. They played with a lot of energy, a lot of emotion, and they wanted to come. You could just tell they wanted to come out and just attack, not give Georgia Tech any hope whatsoever. Offense comes out slinging. Cohen nearly throws for 300 yards in the first half alone.
Mhm.
And Marcus Freeman, I'm looking forward to going back charting his blitzes. Maybe two snaps he doesn't bring somebody. He was just bringing it all day long against that Georgia Tech offensive line. So it was awesome to see, and definitely a great statement and an unbelievable senior day getting ready to go into Palo Alto next week.
Why do you think he blitzed so much? Do you think they just saw a vulnerability? It feels like Georgia Tech's offensive line just did not even want to play in the football game today.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. Their offensive line was they didn't they did not look like some Division One ACC offensive linemen. They did just they didn't look the part physically looking,
Mhm.
athletic looking. Yeah, he just brought it. I think so. They got a pretty good. And the other thing is they got a heck of a running back. They wanted to
Yep.
plug up lanes, frustrate him. They gave up a handful of 6, some 7 yarders here and there, but overall they just wanted to frustrate Georgia Tech and basically just get after that quarterback and say you're not going to do anything against us today. And it was a domination from the get go.
Yeah, let's reference some numbers here real quick. Notre Dame was 6 sacks on the afternoon or early evening and 10 total tackles for loss. I think that's one big memory from the game is just the overall defensive front onslaught on the Georgia Tech quarterback. But really, I just want your thoughts real quick on Myron Tungavailoa Mosa's return. That's I think Drew Brees said during the broadcast that's kind of what movie scripts are like. Watching him score a touchdown was awesome.
Oh yeah, big man rumble. So you go 70 plus yards. Yeah, that guy probably needs, MTA probably needed a little bit of oxygen, but he was happy as could be. Seriously, what a great way to go. Obviously his father passed away in camp. He's named a captain. He's had a heck of a year. Seriously, he really has had a great year. That was one of the things I had a question of as a Notre Dame follower when they said they were going to move him out to the strong end, the 5 technique. Obviously, Notre Dame's had a handful of guys go in the NFL that have played that position the last few years. And
Yeah.
what was MTA going to do going from a 285, 290-pound 3 tech the last few years? He thinned down, is in amazing shape. And I truly believe he's going to be, a third round type of a draft choice when it comes to NFL draft because of his versatility and
Mhm.
all the positions he's played at Notre Dame. So hats off to him. He has been a stud since game one this year.
Yeah, in fact, I put together the Irish on NFL mock drafts content item this week, and Myron is starting to appear on some of those top 10 to 15 interior defensive lineman lists. So, it's funny. You look at the defensive stats, and it's easy to get caught up at who's on the top, but you go down about 10 or 11 guys. Isaiah Foskey, what an unbelievable game. And Tim, you point out, before we went on, he essentially was responsible for 14 points.
Oh yes, obviously the sack, the fumble there with MTA, and then obviously the Kaiser touchdown there, which is interesting because they ran the famous zone. They ran a zone blitz cover 3 on that play. They brought White, and then they brought Kaiser, who's playing basically the outside backer there to the wide side. Foskey has man to man because the corner was Bellin playing cover 3. Foskey's got the tight end man to man. That's what you do when you see the whole front. The front slants into the boundary. You always drop the rush the boundary in, which is Foskey. The tight end pass sets. Foskey rushes, beats him. Boom! There's the sack right into Kaiser's hand. So 2 big plays that lead to 14 points there for Notre Dame.
I know we'll get questions in our comments about the status of Jack Kaiser. We won't be able to see Brian Kelly's post-game presser as we do this show. But another linebacker, Beau Bauer, given a lot of opportunity again today and leads the team in tackles with 9. What'd you think about Beau Bauer's performance?
Same as always. I mean,
Yeah,
I love the guy. I've been saying it all year. He's a playmaker. He's an athlete. Not an athlete on that one run where he got paused and got looked like his feet were in quicksand there for a second. Prince Collie blows up that back when the QB scrambles outside. But overall, I mean, he had another great pass breakup.
yep,
Just, I mean, just a stud. Yeah, the pass breakups got 0 there. He broke up that one pass down the seam there. But no, Bauer's an athlete. He played outstanding. A lot of guys played really good football out there. Isaiah Pryor, you got there number 2, on the tackle list. He played a ton. Jordan Botelho, number
yeah.
12, I thought really stood. But Botelho could run. That guy's got a motor on him, chasing down a handful of plays today. And obviously, Cross had a big sack, had a couple really good pressures inside. Overall, the defense was just, I mean, it was just lights out. They
Yeah.
just played their tails off today.
We might be thinking of J.D. Bertrand on that pass down the seam because I thought it was Bauer as well,
It was okay.
and then because it was like a third down situation, that's normally out of the middle linebacker spot. That's where you'd see Bauer, but I think it was J.D. Bertrand. And then I thought to
I think it
myself,
was in the fourth quarter. I
yeah,
think Bertrand had one early
oh,
on
did
a
he? Okay,
blitz and he covered the seams. Bauer had one late,
okay.
I thought, but that's just quick memory there soon after the game.
And sometimes these stats are updated; they're not
Yes,
always 100% accurate. Immediately after the game, yeah, and Prince Collie, how about 5 tackles? I mean,
he's fit. He's physical. He's obviously playing a little bit more and more. Over the last month, his body, he just looks like it. Great. How about the run down there where he jumps? I thought he was going to jump and get that interception on that one deep pass. He's athletic. He blows. He's got contained on the one blitz. Talking about the one big run Georgia Tech had to get down there. He just goes and flatbacks that running back. He's supposed to be contained. We'll
Mhm.
talk about that in the coaching room there with him. Like, you got to be under control. You're the contained guy, but his physics very physical. Before he comes in and finishes the whole game at will linebacker, he's down there on a solo tackle to start the third quarter on kickoff team. So he's lights out. He really is.
Notre Dame again wins 55-0 over Georgia Tech. Please hit like on this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once you subscribe, you can take part in the comments and questions section, and we'll get to it. I just want to reference real quick. Notre Dame did beat South Florida 52-0 last year at Notre Dame Stadium, and then in 2019, I was looking at this right before the game finished. I think they scored 66 against New Mexico State. So as far as that 55-0, a historical precedent, you don't have to go far. You don't have to go back very far to find
Yeah.
a similar score. What
Hey,
you
real
think?
quick.
Go ahead.
Real quick. No, I'm looking over the stats here real quick while we're looking at these. A guy that really popped out a lot today, who we have not seen barely any of, is 48, Will Schweitzer. I thought
Yeah.
there's a handful of plays. I'm like, who the heck's 48? Got to get out the roster because it's been a while. Another young kid who looks like he could run once he's out there full time.
And how
I just liked him because I saw 48 flash on the screen quite a bit in that second half.
how about Alex Aronsberger with the sack, the German getting through and adding
Yeah,
to the
the
team?
German.
That's
Literally,
awesome.
I put that on my notes. The German.
Let's talk about Jack
Yeah.
Cohen a little bit. 285 yards passing on the game. Those were all in the first half. He was 0 for 2 passing in that one drive in the third quarter and then left the game. But, I mean, once again, a really good performance from Cohen.
Well, obviously that was the game plan to come out, sling that thing. It goes back to on our final thoughts on Friday where, Georgia Tech was giving up nearly 15 yards a catch this year.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia Tech was giving up, nearly 275 yards passing a game. It was like 271-ish. So it's 270 plus. And Cohen breaks that in one half against what Georgia Tech's done all year. So, they weren't efficient. They weren't a solid back group, and they attacked them. I mean, the first play, you're going up to Austin, you're attacking all over the place. Cohen was efficient, really solid. The O-line was a little, obviously to start the game, a pinch shaky there on that opening drive. They had to settle on a field goal. But
Yep.
overall, I mean, he came out, was just lights out, senior day, and he looked sharp as could be.
One thing I was impressed with, and I'd like your insight on this as a coach, Tim, is Georgia Tech had 117 yards in the first half, obviously a low number,
Yep.
but as Notre Dame started putting in backups on defense, they only had 107 yards in the second half. I know Notre Dame's offense shortened the game some, but still, I mean, that's what it takes to pitch a shutout ultimately, right? I mean, you got to have your backups ready to go.
Well, there were still a lot of possessions. Georgia Tech probably, going over the notes here, must have had, well, how many drives was all the backups there?
Yep.
Georgia Tech must have had 4 or 5 of those.
Right.
Still with all of those backups out there. So the starters really only played that series and a half, so to speak. And then you started just getting just tons of guys rotating all over the place. A lot of the DBs played because the experience and the short, and they don't have a ton. They didn't play a lot of freshmen, those DBs yet. So, but overall, the linebackers, the D line, rotating a ton of guys out there. But no, you're right. For those guys to come out there, step in, keep the shutout going, which let's give a huge kudos to Coach Freeman, the defensive staff. That is now, they mentioned it at halftime. And I charted the whole second half. They are up to 35 straight possessions with no touchdowns, going back to the North Carolina game. 35 straight possessions, and now that's 3 straight games, 12 quarters. 12 quarters, they haven't allowed a touchdown, an offensive touchdown. So they're playing. It's Division I football. You can say what you have. Obviously some of the offenses with Navy struggled. Georgia Tech, Virginia didn't have Armstrong, but Virginia still had those unbelievable athletes all over the place, and they held them without a touchdown. So, pretty awesome stat when you break that down for what the defense has done the last couple of games.
Bringing up this comment from Kai S. Says it's glad to see the OL finally coming together. But I wanted just to ask you really quick because we had a Rocco Spindler sighting at the end of the game. He's like the most popular kid who hasn't played yet. I know Notre Dame fans would like to hear your thoughts on what you saw out of him.
Yeah, number 50. I literally, boom, I went back, rewatched his first drive, twice just to see how he looks. Obviously the guy's not played a ton, so you can't sit there and grade him, and have hooting and hollering. But I'll tell you what, he was physical. His two, the one holding call that came back, he has a great base block that was holding out there on Evans 88. Great base block, really physical point of attack. On the third down pass, he doesn't have anyone rush him, so he goes out and helps Carmody and goes and blasts that DN. Nice little rib shot, which whenever those guys show it to you and you don't have a guy, you always go help your buddy, which was great instinct by him to go do that. I thought he was physical. I kind of paid attention to his first 2 drives. He had a really good get off, really good push. You could tell he's not the strongest dude as far as just getting a big push, but that's going to come. It really is. The first thing I popped out was just his get off, his explosiveness into the guy. And he was going against a really big defensive tackle out there from Georgia Tech.
Yeah, Patrick, to answer your question, it was that South Florida game last year I referenced was last time Notre Dame held an opponent scoreless, the 52-0 win over
which goes back just real quick. The MTA, you brought him up. He gets the blocked field goal.
Yeah.
You got the blocked field goal.
That's
so
right.
There's another little shout out to MTA for, preserving that shout out today.
Yeah, I grabbed the Kleenex box, by the way, when they interviewed his mom on the sideline non-sideline in the stands.
But that was awesome. That's a great point, Greg. That's everything about Notre Dame. Obviously, here's a young man that's coming from Hawaii, a late offer 5 years ago, and comes out to South Bend, and he's going to graduate with a degree. He's going to, as a captain, and he's going to be making an NFL paycheck here in a few short months.
Please hit like on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, seek out our free newsletter on blueandgold.com. Please sign up for that. It's such an easy way to keep up with what we're doing. D-Rock Irish says no one fell asleep in this game. I think he's just talking to the fact that everyone was ready to go. Again, Notre Dame firing on all cylinders. I actually put that line, in my staff predictions for Friday. It felt like Notre Dame was due for a game like this.
Yes, and it really, that's a great point because it really did. You said that in our final thoughts here on Friday about that, how you just felt that they're just going to come out and light it up, and they sure as heck did. There's no let off. That's 4 straight games, mind you, on Senior Day. They scored over 40 points.
Yeah,
it's going back to 2017 Navy, where it was a 24-17 game. 4 straight games now over 40 points on Senior Day. So they're just leaving, no doubt, coming out, taking care of business.
Just some more comments on the offensive line. Yeah, I think we agree. One thing that is interesting to talk about with Senior Day is Jarrett Patterson and the possibility. From what I understand, it's not certain he'd go to the NFL, even though if you look at NFL mock drafts and stuff, he's usually a top 2 to 3 rated center in the country. But he could be back next year. So like all of a sudden you go from piecemealing a line and needing a transfer to like, wow, we've got 6, 7 guys we would love to play next year.
No, you know what? And what he says right there, and they have improved a lot. They got, Lugg got beat on a speed rush early. At Georgia Tech, mind you, it's like, they don't have a bunch of nobodies. They had 8 sacks against Sam Howell this year. And we know Sam Howell could run. They sacked him 8 times. Mm-hmm. So they had the one early one. And then on the second one, which was, the pressure where Cohen had to get rid of it, Christophic should have came off because the way the protection was set, he stayed on Patterson's guy too long, and the Will Backer popped, and that was his guy. But even on that, Williams does a chip. If Cohen just dumps it to Williams, boom, he walks in for a walk-in touchdown.
Yep.
O-line has improved. One of the, they probably improved too much. Because as I was mentioned during the game, I thought the running backs were just sitting back there in a chair hanging out.
Yeah,
Diggs paused. One time, Diggs literally got the ball, stood there, waited 3 seconds to find a hole, and it's like, buddy, you got to run.
Yeah, yeah.
I even thought Williams. There's one cut where Williams goes to the left and gets tackled for only a 2 or 3 yard gain. Yeah. People will say, "Oh, that's the O-line." No, Williams cut outside. If Williams follows right behind Christophic, he's got probably a 10-plus yard run on an inside zone, and he bounced it when he should have cut inside. Too patient a few times, but overall, it's the running backs.
Yeah,
those are running backs played physical.
I'm gonna roll some photos from our guy Chad Weaver. These just from the first half, some cool shots.
Right here, Greg. Well, right here you got Estime. What did he look like, huh?
Oh, I mean, we had a question. Yeah, he from John DeCrisco. I mean, 230 pounds and he's flying.
Oh man, wow. I mean, yeah, Kyron Williams. Hey, God bless him. He's gonna have a heck of an NFL career. And going back to what we talked about, him not even being on the Doak Walker semifinals list is an absolute joke because he does everything.
Yeah,
slot, you name it. He's going to do everything. He's going to be a great NFL back. But Notre Dame's got Diggs. Tyree, I thought Tyree looked very physical today. Very physical, more so than he has all season. I know he's hurt, but I mean, even before he got hurt, I thought he ran hard. And then Estime, yeah, I think he's ready to start running the football here in 2022.
But it's a sign of a good program, right? When you're going to, I mean, presuming that Kyron Williams is going to go to the NFL, and you go into next year maybe even more excited about the running back room you have than maybe going into this year. I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
Exactly. And then you bring in, the Texan who's going to be coming in as a true freshman. You watch his senior highlight film. Unbelievable. That guy looks legit right from the get-go. Hey, but real quick on the O-line, something I've asked about, and, I've asked Patrick Engel about this, who's, goes to all the press conferences, is there's always been a little scuttlebutt about does Lugg come back? Because Lugg does have a COVID year, and Lugg, I know he's a 5th-year guy. This is his first year being the guy.
Yep.
So he's waited 5 years to be the guy each and every day. And there's been a little grumblings about possibly him wanting to come back and obviously use his 6th year as the COVID year, which if he's back, Patterson's back, the O-line is going to be a Joe Moore Award, watch list for sure next year.
Yeah. Should we take a look at some of the action going on around Notre Dame with the college football playoff real quick? Here's the stat page, but let me pull up what the rankings were if people needed a refresher. But Notre Dame came into the game number 8 in the most recent college football playoff poll. And with today's action, let's look at the scoreboard here and what we got.
Michigan.
But and can you see that all right on the screen, Tim? I just want to make sure.
I got you.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, I got you.
Good. Obviously Michigan State. Did you have a chance to watch that game? And how about a team that riding off the high of beating Michigan a few weeks ago? I don't know if they laid an egg or if Ohio State's 49 points better, but that was a team that was ahead of Notre Dame.
I watched the first half. I sent you that text. It's like they came out and just were like, yeah, we're just gonna handle these guys from the get go. They played Ohio State looked like they were playing for the national title today, so
Yeah.
they left no doubt. And Michigan State, hey, now they got to get ready and play Penn State here in a few weeks. But yeah, Michigan State just looked like they had nothing out there.
Right. So next week, it's just I know there's some games still going on, right? Michigan is up big on Maryland. I'm trying to look at who else. Alabama's taking care of business against Arkansas. So next week, just in case, so Notre Dame should move up to at least 7th, right? They will have presumably, and let's just say the committee holds their ground on feeling Michigan's better than Notre Dame. Michigan still has Ohio State. Cincinnati did they beat SMU? Is that, yeah, they're up big.
Yeah.
So you have Ohio State and Michigan playing one another. Then Oregon at 3. They play Utah tonight, and we'll be done well before 7 o'clock. So that the 7 o'clock is the Stanford Cal game. What time is the Utah game?
7:30. 7:30 is Oregon Utah.
So we'll be done before both, so Notre Dame fans can watch those because those will both be of huge interest. And then Alabama plays at Auburn next week. There's going to be at least one. I mean, obviously Ohio State and Michigan play one another, so that's an opportunity to move up to 6. But Notre Dame's also running out of time, which is why, Tim, tonight is so important with Oregon and Utah.
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, that's the game for Notre Dame is the Oregon. They've had a couple touchdown games. They've struggled in a few. Obviously, they beat the Buckeyes early in the year, lost to a horrible Stanford team who ND has next week, which is going to be a great comparison game for Notre Dame and Oregon if something has to come up down the road. But yeah, I mean, Utah's solid, physical, and obviously Oregon may have to play them twice two in the next 3 weeks. So that's going to be interesting to see here. That's the game. That really is, because the Buckeyes, Michigan, one of them are going to get their 2 losses. It's this Oregon. If Oregon gets out of there, then it literally could open up a door there for Notre Dame without a doubt.
Yep. We have just a couple questions that I wanted to get to. Let me put this up here. Had a question about the Josh Lugg discussion and their ability to come back. Wow, we have a lot of comments coming through, so I just lost it. But someone had asked if Notre Dame would take Josh Lugg's returning next year. And I think that there's going to, I don't have the reporting on this. This is more of Tyler and Patrick's area, but they might potentially have some decisions. And I think that this is just a ramification of the COVID year where you have players that may not be high NFL draft picks, but they have a year.
Well, that was Heinisch. Heinisch this year. Heinisch says, "Yeah, I'm not going to get drafted. I'll be a late rounder free agent. I'm going to come back and be a team captain." And he loves Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. So my thing with Lugg, and I brought this up a handful, is obviously he redshirted. He played a bunch in 19 when Hainsey got hurt. He was played right tackle, and obviously last year. The 2020 where he had to fill in a few spots. So he's never been the guy until now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, would they let Lugg back? Well, why wouldn't they let Lugg back? He's a captain. He has transformed his body. He was a bigger guy. He's lost weight, has thinned out. I'm not saying he's a future, second round draft choice like Eichenberg was, but he's a captain. He's a program guy. He's going to be do you have him as a second year guy? Out there on the right side? Does he move to right guard? That's the other thing. Does he move to right guard so Fisher's the right tackle?
Yeah.
So that would be a heck of an offensive line if that happened.
And he's got the experience playing. Josh Lugg, that is, having played it. I think Jay agrees. He says Alton Fisher should be the starting tackles next year. I mean, yeah, that's how I would go.
Exactly.
Kayes doesn't think there'd be a lot of offense in that Alabama-Georgia game. I would point out, though, that in past years, I mean, they always have awesome defenses at Alabama and Georgia.
They score again. They score. Look at the game last year in Georgia. The great defenses, it was a shootout. Even the national championship game ended up what was it, 35-28 or something? I forget the final score. But they score. Even the classic 2012 game that got Alabama into the championship game with Notre Dame was a scoring game. So 10-6. No, hey, there's way too many athletes out there for that thing to be 10-6. If it's 10-6, Georgia's winning.
I'm pulling up Notre Dame's football schedule for next year because we do have a good question
Well,
in the comments. Looking forward here. Thomas asked, Greg, do you think we could be a college football playoff team next year? Well, let's look at the schedule. I think everyone knows how this season starts.
oh yeah,
Starts in Columbus. The one thing I'll say, when Ohio State has lost in recent years, it has been earlier in the year, and then they start to look like this unbeatable team. I mean, like poor Michigan. They always got to play Ohio State when they're absolutely rolling, and then Ohio State, if they do lose again, it ends up being in the playoffs. But
hey, no, I mean next year. I mean people. I mean and that's what the pundits always talk about. All out there is, oh, Notre Dame's going to be playing for in 22, 23. Hey, it's Notre Dame. It's Brian Kelly. It's five. By the way, this is 5 straight years now with double-digit wins. So this is becoming the norm. He's created this now. So when you go playoffs, I mean, number one, I mean, that is the standard. Coach Kelly's going to talk about that. That is what they're shooting for.
yep,
And if you're going to be a playoff team, yeah, you got to go into Columbus and beat them. I mean, if they don't win, that means they have to win 11 in a row.
right,
So, and one of those is going to be Clemson, by the way, who looked, I mean, they
better,
just demolished Wake Forest today.
yeah, yeah.
And they're getting better. For as bad as Clemson's been this year, they're going to be in the top 25. They have to be in the top 25 this week. So they're just getting better, getting better, getting better. And obviously they're going to be a heck of a football team next year.
We should have mentioned, or I don't know if we should have mentioned, but it's worth mentioning. Wake Forest was one of the other one-loss
Yep.
teams coming in. They're now out of that. Oklahoma with a tight, I think, 7-point win over Iowa State. Oh, I'm just not sold
Yep.
on Oklahoma at all. I'm not sold on. I'm curious to watch that game, Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma, because I really have no idea how good Oklahoma State is, but Oklahoma
I've only watched them a little bit. They very athletic on D, not as crazy on offense as they've been. It's not your typical Gundy team, which is sling it 80 times a game and just see what happens. But much more run, play defense, really, really physical Oklahoma State team.
Tim, what are thoughts you got from tonight? I mean, it's hard to take too much away from a 50. I mean, it's hard to be negative or say anything
Sure.
super critical. I mean, I think we talked about earlier about how a couple posters have pointed out that, like, wow, I mean, it's just what a win, and even the guys coming in were playing great. It's got to be one of those fun locker room moments. I'm sure everyone got a little.
Oh, it's senior day. It's go out there. I mean, they handle business. You could say it 1,000 times today. They handled business. They didn't go out there. They didn't sleepwalk. They didn't get all teary-eyed. Which, by the way, I noticed they did not do the parents on the field. They just announced the kids and they just
Yep.
ran off. So they didn't do that whole spiel where they go out there and take 20 photos and crying with mom, give them flowers and all that. They just said, hey, announced them, let's go play football. And I think that was an awesome, awesome tone. And real quick about 2022, 2022, one of the things now with Ramon Henderson, which by the way, he played outstanding.
Yeah.
He was all over the field, had some really physical solo tackles in the alley today on some quick outs and had a nice pass breakup. Now with Henderson in the lineup, you got all the DBs returning. So that's going to be a big plus going into Columbus. You got all those guys because assuming Bracey comes back for his 5th year, and why wouldn't he come back for a 5th year?
Yeah, you'd think Notre Dame would still take a transfer at the safety position, but again, you don't want to
Sure.
rely on that particularly early in the year. So I think that's one of the kind of the more subtle, really important developments is Notre Dame starting to find some solutions at the safety spot
Well,
for life
have
after Kyle Hamilton.
Well, just once again, I mean, how many times did you see 26 just flash on the screen a little bit, Xavier Watts? So he's mixing and matching out there, playing a ton, doing more. So there's another body out there. So the fact that Henderson's basically, taken Houston Griffith's spot, which is good. I think Henderson brings a little bit more of a tackling presence out there than, Griffith has done. But now all those guys are going to be returning. And I think the key for the linebackers, when you really want to talk about 2022, is Bauer.
Yep.
Do they convince Beau Bauer to come back and play a 5th year?
I would love to have him in the middle. I'm a big Beau Bauer
Yes.
fan. I mean, absolutely. Thomas, thanks for the heads up here. We do have a tightening of that Alabama Arkansas game. Um, Arkansas has cut that lead to 6. I thought I just saw that Arkansas had the ball, but the icon's back on
Oh wow.
Alabama here, so there might have been a turnover there. See that just flipped back. See that? That's weird. That could be a
Well,
Yahoo
you know,
scoreboard
you know, I mean,
glitch.
Bama's Bama. Bama's going to give. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, seriously, are they really the number 2 team? In America, they lost to A&M, who, barely beat Colorado, probably one of the worst teams in the Pac-12. A&M wasn't even ranked when when A&M beat Alabama. They struggled with the worst Florida team in 50 years.
Yep.
Florida should have won that ball game. It's Bama. It's almost like, oh, we're just going to automatically put them in the top 4. And that's, I mean, they haven't been
I just
dominant, so to
yeah.
speak. LSU, I mean, my gosh, they firing their football coach. And if LSU had an offense just for a couple minutes, they beat Bama in that game. They
Yep.
outplayed Bama most of the game and had legitimate shots inside the red zone in the fourth quarter to score, and they didn't.
Yep.
So, I mean, this ain't the 2012 Alabama team, and this is far
No.
from last year's team.
No, I think they're like just have a cyclical down year. I know, especially on their offensive line, they're not. They're
Yeah.
just not like as dominant, and that's why they've had a big reason why they've had some close games. Look at this Virginia Pittsburgh game. That one's tight.
Well, how about that one? How about in Madison, Wisconsin?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Notre Dame. I mean, who knows if it
You-
comes down to the committee comparing schedules, but it sure would be nice if Wisconsin wins out and somehow wins. I mean,
yes.
they'd have to beat Ohio State, but
Yes.
even a close loss to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship would be, I think, big for Notre Dame's perception and
Well,
resume.
I mean, Notre Dame needs Wisconsin to win out and just get to, Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. Wisconsin needs to win this football game. So, if you're Notre Dame fans, you're rooting for Wisconsin right there. Hard root, obviously, tonight for Utah.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think we should let our viewers maybe refresh their drinks. 28 minutes away from the Stanford Cal kickoff. Not necessarily two
Oh,
great teams, but it is Notre
yeah.
Dame's next opponent, Stanford. I'll be watching. I'll be flipping
I like
between
it.
them, but I'll definitely be. That's actually on the Pac-12 network though, so not everyone will necessarily have that. I won't even have it on YouTube TV. I'll probably watch it on YouTube tomorrow, and then as you said, Tim, verified. Oregon and Utah is at 7:30. So um, that's all I have. Tim, final thoughts from the game tonight or this afternoon?
No, great game, great energy, great effort. The stadium was great. It was the perfect senior day, the perfect way to get your 10th win. Especially you got Wake Forest right behind you, knocked out. Michigan State now knocked out. Like you're saying, Oklahoma struggling. Is Oklahoma really going to jump up 7 spots to the top 4? I don't see how they do that. So
Yeah.
no, it's hey, get healthy, just get ready to go. Go into Palo Alto, which has been a house of horrors for Notre Dame for many years. Obviously, they went out there in 2019 and handled business and blew them out of the water
Yeah.
with the 19 team. So they got to do the same thing. They got to go into up north, Northern California, and go up there and just spank Stanford and go finish 11-1. Leave no doubt. People will talk about Notre Dame only played 12 games. How many SEC teams played 1 AA's this year?
Well,
So
Georgia had their glorified bye this week against Charleston Southern.
no,
It's just a glorified bye. I mean, it's like
it's ridiculous.
it's
I've
practice.
I've never understood the 13th data point, as they say. Why is the committee even counting any of those stats? Any of those things against a 1 AA should be just thrown out, and you only count game. For me, I would only even count Power 5 games.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Vikes 1414 just want to compliment us on our shirts and ties. I presume talking about us. I must
Thank
say,
you.
my wife has to help me dress. 'Cause I'm colorblind, like red green colorblind, like a lot of
Yeah.
males are. And so if I'm left to my own devices on picking shirts and ties, there could be some pretty wacky
Well,
results out of that. So
obviously Greg's an alum, and my wife is a Notre Dame alum, and she literally said, "Tim, you wore that shirt last week." So she found this one for me and says, "You're wearing this tonight." So, kudos and thank you, Kelly, for helping me get dressed up here for tonight.
I did want to bring up. I want to build on one point from you. I know we said we were just about to leave, but why not hang on for a little bit longer?
Sure.
I said on our board, like, I think the blowout win is really big going into the Stanford game. It just gives, it's just nice that Notre Dame didn't have to have a close game, because that trip is tough going out there,
Yeah.
even
No,
when it's not
it's
against a great team.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Kelly's done a great job. Obviously, the way he does his Thanksgiving, he gets out there. They do Thanksgiving on campus. In the past, Notre Dame used to do Thanksgiving in California, where they're playing obviously SC or Stanford. And it's been tough. And, we could talk all week long, and it's going to be a theme a little bit about how Kelly has gone out there. I mean, 2015, 2017, they had
Yeah.
legitimate shots to go to a BCS Bowl, and Stanford beat them.
Right.
But those Stanford teams
We're way
were
better than they're.
way better,
Yeah.
really, really good. Kelly's in 2011, they went out there, and Andrew Luck and those guys just ran power down their throats all game long. So they have had some tough spots out there. I was out there in 06, by the way. Me and my wife, like I said, as a Notre Dame alum, we went to the
Yep.
06 game,
Nice.
which clinched the Fiesta Bowl bid.
Yep.
Back then with Weiss and all that great atmosphere, which, by the way, was the last game of the old stadium. They tore it down and renovated it and stuff like that. And it was literally 90% of the stadium was Notre Dame fans in that game. So that was a lot of fun.
Yep.
So I've been in that place. I've been there for a loss, which is not fun, but Notre Dame should go out there and just demolish these guys.
Yeah, I was in there. I was in the old stadium out there as a student, but not their redo. I still argue that the second half of the 2018 Stanford game at Notre Dame, when Notre Dame took over that game and ended up beating them comfortably, as a program is two of the most important quarters of football that the Notre Dame program's had. To get to the summit, Notre Dame still has to make sure that they are the program where elite academic-minded football players go to. They need to make sure Stanford is a clear number 2. And I think that started the tide for that.
Well, that's a great point, because I've actually talked about that with some friends as well, about that 18-year. Obviously, they go to the Final Four, but that 18 game, Stanford Notre Dame, that was a battle of top 10.
Top 10 teams, yeah. And
top 10. And I think Game Day was on there. ESPN Game Day was even there in South Bend. So, and that was Dexter Williams' first game back, and he hits the counter for 55 yards. Looked like Rocket Ismail. He was so fast hitting the hole for their touchdown. But that is a great point. That game, top 10, huge implications, and they took it to him. Because remember, Notre Dame has struggled with some really, really high-end football players that have chosen Stanford last second. Paulson Adebo, the DB, who's gone. A couple offensive linemen that they've been recruiting here and there that they've lost out on. Thomas Booker, the really good defensive end that they recruited heavily and lost him toStanford. So,
but it used to happen more often.
To get those guys. What's
that?
It
used to happen more in the early teens, and then Notre Dame started to. I mean, that was very important. If Brian Kelly ever writes a book about his time at Notre Dame, I have a feeling he's going to talk about that night as being a pretty important one. So
that's a great point. I mean, especially the way they lost in 15 with the Van Gorder D. They scored too quick with Kaiser down there, gave them a minute left, and obviously 17 after the way they lost in South Beach to Miami to then go back out there and lay an egg, which was not a good feeling.
Yep. Notre Dame victorious over Georgia Tech 55-0. Notre Dame is now 10-1 on the year, as we said, 5 straight seasons with 10 wins or more. That's a first in program history. It's 15 straight wins in November, 14th straight at home over an ACC opponent. Pretty remarkable streaks. Those are streaks of a good program. So, Tim, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, thank you for listening in. Enjoy the West Coast football tonight, hopefully with a nice beverage. Drink responsibly. Maybe you should just watch Oregon, Utah instead. So,
hey, like I said, light your Notre Dame candles, and you go Utes tonight. Go Utes, beat the Ducks.
All right, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a good night.
You got it.